Great to be here. Thank you, everybody. I was originally planning on using my time today to talk about the past, the present, the future of national conservatism, but there's been a pretty extraordinary event in the last 10 days that obviously has to be addressed at the outset that we need to talk about right now. There's been a series of hoaxes that have defined our democracy for the last decade. If you're in this room today, you know them very well, you're familiar with them all. What all those hoaxes had in common, though, is that the establishment media never acknowledged the existence of the hoax until after it had achieved its desired effect, right? They persisted, at least in the eyes of the media and those who still believe the corporate press, until it served its purpose. Then afterwards, they acknowledge, oh, well, you know what, the Hunter Biden laptop was real all along, and it was always real, and in fact, we're not going to introduce it as evidence in a criminal trial. Or, oh, those bounties, those Russian bounties that we said that the White House was ignoring, turns out that was shoddy intel and those never existed and it never happened, but now it's a year later, right? For the first time in the last decade, a major hoax, probably the biggest hoax in all of American history, has been pierced, exploded, blown up, unraveled, right here and now, in real time, 5 months out from an election, right? And that is the Biden cognition hoax. This is an unprecedented event. This is not 2 years later, 4 years later, 6 years later, reading a book about how all along it turns out the president was cognitively impaired to the point where he wasn't even attempting to run the country on a day-to-day basis. It was all run by shadow staff. He took a midday nap, a morning nap, an evening nap, basically only worked from 10 to 2 and 4 to 6 to the extent that he was working at all. It's air quotes for people who are writing this in print. And this isn't something that was revealed years later, right? It happened now. It happened right now. I don't think we appreciate the moment that we're living in. To have the largest hoax in the history of the country exposed before it has served its purpose, right? There was a conspiracy in which Ron Klain is involved and Jeff Zients is involved. The Obamas are involved. You don't think that President Obama understood what Joe Biden's mental state was? You don't think he was aware of that? Right? In which Susan Rice is involved, the president's closest aides are involved. Obviously, you think Jeffries doesn't know? You think Pelosi doesn't know? You think Schumer doesn't know? You don't think the heads of all of our intel agencies know? Everybody who was anybody in the Democrat Party knew, participated in it, covered it up, and allowed the country to be run by secret, unnamed Democrat Party interests and staffers for 3.5 years as we inched closer to World War III and as foreign adversaries around the world made their moves. By the way, you don't think our foreign enemies have intelligence services that are capable of piercing into the Democratic Party's conversations and communications to know the truth about its mental state? Isn't it all so clear now? Can't you see everything now? Every single foreign adversary, enemy, power rival, whatever threat we face, has known and understood what Pelosi knew and Jeffries knew, and most importantly, Kamala Harris knew, which is that Joe Biden was cognitively impaired to the point of being non-functional, brain dead in common parlance, for 3.5 years. Now, the way they're able to, of course, keep this hoax going, and I admit this is what I would call a highly credible inference, is that at occasional events, they would pump Joe Biden full of drugs to the point where he could perform for 45 to 60 minutes, right? And so their obvious assumption and presumption was that in June, they would give him the cocktail, he would be able to speak for about 45 minutes, and they could continue the hoax and the cover-up and everything else. Unfortunately for them, President Trump delivered a knockout blow against Joe Biden in the first round of the prize fight, and his true vegetative state was revealed as a result of President Trump's KO. And that's the reality we're now living in. And so the entire Democrat machine, establishment, the whole party now made a decision. They had two choices: persist in the cover-up or engage in a mad dash, last-hour effort to substitute another nominee for Joe Biden. Being the champions of democracy, all it would require is simply throwing out every single vote that everyone had participated in the entire Democratic primary and having a handful of donors select a new nominee, because that's, of course, how democracy works for the Democrat Party, right? So, this is a really astonishing moment. Our job, our task as whether it be as national conservatives, regular conservatives, as Republicans, as even just regular independent Americans, our task is to make the case to the American people that a party that is so hell-bent on power, that it is willing to engineer a conspiracy of this scope and magnitude, must be booted from the halls of power in a thunderous fashion this November. I mean, that alone is so monstrously disqualifying, so horrendously sinister. I mean, really think about this. We are at the greatest risk of nuclear conflict, really, since the onset of the Cold War. And I honestly think if you study the Cold War, there was never a day in the Cold War where we were in more danger of nuclear conflict than we're in right now. Not during the Cuban Missile Crisis, not during any of the high points of tension with Khrushchev. I think it's certainly not during the Reagan administration. I think right now is the greatest risk of nuclear conflict we've had, and the president is brain dead. And the vice president, who is duty-bound under the 25th Amendment, to dispatch a message to Congress saying he's not able to perform the duties of his office, was at the center of the cover-up, right? In other words, she's the only person who has an affirmative constitutional duty. I mean, everyone, of course, has a moral duty, an ethical duty, and just a duty as a human being. But she has a constitutional duty to invoke the 25th Amendment and take his place, and she was at the center of the cover-up. Can you conceive of the magnitude of this crime? As we have a border that's being invaded, inflation raging out of control, war in Europe, war in the Middle East, belligerent China, hostilities returning to the Korean Peninsula, everywhere in the world teetering towards chaos, disorder, and destruction. And there's literally no president of the United States. How can you not? How can any party that participates in a cover-up so vast not be swept from Washington in a hail of righteous indignation? I mean, just think about it for a second. I'll repeat my questions. Is there any universe where Pelosi did not know exactly what was going on? Where Hakeem Jeffries did not know exactly what was going on? Do you think that Chuck Schumer, in his conversation with Joe Biden, didn't know exactly what was going on? Everyone at the White House knew. Everyone in Congress, in his party, particularly in leadership positions, knew. They all knew. And of course the vice president knew. And they covered it up. Has ever so grave a crime been committed against the country by the people who are constitutionally responsible for running the country? We can talk about every other issue, but is there a more potent sign that we are teetering towards becoming a banana republic than the fact that we haven't even been run by a president for 3.5 years? What more? Again, this is the Democrat Party claims to be the champion of democracy. Never mind the rigged trials, never mind the communist persecutions, never mind the censoring of this free speech, never mind the weaponization of justice, never mind jailing dissidents, never mind trying to financially bankrupt and ruin anybody who speaks out against them, never mind trying to get illegal aliens to vote by the millions in our elections. But also, they're running the country by secret, unelected oligarchy, right? They have donors, staff interests, and secret Democrat Party shadow bosses running the country. So we are now governed by oligarchy. This is a true fact, a true state of affairs. So I'll transition from this to the philosophical, which is that what animates, and I'm speaking to you today, my personal capacity, on my own behalf, just hear Stephen Miller and his friends. What animates the Democrat Party? What is their motivation, right? What is the big mistake Republicans have made up until the Trump era for half a century in understanding the Democrat Party? Of course, what I'm about to say has become more true with every passing year. The issues are the means, they're not the end, right? The mass illegal immigration, the importation of illegal voters is the means, it's not the end. Censorship is the means, not the end. Jailing dissidents is the means, not the end. Weaponizing our financial system is the means, not the end. What is the motivation? What would motivate them to engage in this conspiracy to hide the fact that Joe Biden is in a mental vegetative state? We all know the answer. It's one word. We all know it. It's power. It's power. The left in America today, which has fully taken over the Democrat Party, is motivated by one thing and one thing only: power. So why is national conservatism so important? How are you going to defeat an opponent that is so ruthless, that is so merciless, again, that is throwing its political enemies in jail? Are you going to beat it with pie charts? You need to elect a government of national conservatives who can rally a populist, widespread, broad-based, multi-ethnic, multiracial coalition of working and middle-class Americans who just want their country back. This is fundamentally a movement of the heart. The big thing to understand is academics, analysis, statistics, these are instruments, right? These are tools, right? You do not build a political party around a calculator, right? You don't build a political party around an abacus. These are tools, these are instruments, these are important things. A political party is built around feelings, hopes, dreams, aspirations, desires. Most importantly, it's built around people's love for their husbands, their wives, their children, their city, their community, and their country. It is a movement of the heart. National conservatism fundamentally is built from and acknowledges that the human heart is the center of American politics. That is what you're communicating to, that is what you're speaking to. Right? The greatest historic failure of the Republican Party is its inability to understand that truth. Of course, that all changed in 2016 when President Trump stepped onto the scene. So you talk about the heart. Right? What issue more moves the heart, ought to move the heart of every citizen in this country, and yet doesn't elicit even a twinge of sympathy from the corrupt ruling class? It's our wide open border. There's no issue I can think of more than the open border, where the pain and suffering of the American people is met with cruelty, callousness, cravenness by the corrupt elites that are running this country. I mean, really think about what we're talking about here. You know, I've worked in immigration for many, many years, but you don't have to have a background in immigration enforcement or homeland security to understand this. If you have a policy, as the Democrat Party of 2024 does, as the party of Pelosi, Schumer, Biden, Jeffries, Harris do, if you have a policy of mass releasing upon arrive, single adult men from the ages of, say, 16 to 40, immediately, automatically, as soon as they arrive at the border, would there ever be any doubt as to what the consequence of that would be? In other words, you implement a policy that says, I don't care where you come from Syria, come from Turkey, come from Ecuador, come from China, wherever you come from. 25-year-old man, 30-year-old man, 35-year-old man shows up at the border and says, I'm here to be released. And they say, congratulations, you're released. That's your policy, which it has been for almost 4 years. Is there any doubt to what the result of that would be? In other words, do you think that Mayorkas, do you think it eclipsed the limits of his imagination to think what would happen? Do you think it exceeded the limits of Susan Rice's imagination to think what would happen? Jeff Zients, Ron Klain, Nancy Pelosi, Hakeem Jeffries, Chuck Schumer, as well as the other names, John Tester, Sherrod Brown. Do you think any of them? You said, what do you think would happen if the United States had a policy of automatically resettling fighting-age men from any one of 150 countries all over the world upon entry, who only and ever could face removal subsequent to a criminal conviction in the United States, meaning after they commit a crime here? Do you think any of them were unaware of what the result of that would be? For even a second, for an instant? I mean, of course not, right? That's what's so evil, right? So sinister, is that obviously the world's fugitives, the world's predators, the world's rapists and murderers would understand this would be an extremely easy way to come into the United States of America and pursue criminal activity, right? Now we can debate the number. In other words, we can sit here for days and estimate how many murderers, how many child rapists, how many aggravated assaulters, how many people who are engaged in kidnapping and drug dealing. We can debate the numbers. We know that they're extraordinarily vast. But the point is that there was never any doubt on the part of anyone in the Democrat Party implementing this policy what the result would be. Yet, for 3.5 years, there has been a seismic political underreaction to this travesty. A government that, by a matter of choice and design, would release people into the country, knowing that a mother of 5 children would get raped and murdered, knowing that a 12-year-old girl would be assaulted, murdered, hurled into a river, knowing that a 13-year-old girl would be tied up and raped at knife point in a public park, knowing that all of these things would happen and happen again and again and again and keep on happening. A party that would know this, and as I laid out to you, you would have to know it. You could not know it. That would know it and do these things anyway. How can such a group of people ask the citizens of this country to hold any office in this land? Every single person that died because of this release policy died because Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, and the Democrat Party let them in. They let them in. So the only question for us as a movement of the heart, can we, in these next months, can we connect with the hearts of the American people and their desire, their intrinsic, innate human desire to live in safety, to have a safe community for their children, do not have to think twice about if their kid can go to the park and come back and be home for dinner. The innate desire of every citizen to know that their sister, their wife, their mother, their daughter can go out jogging and come back home. The intrinsic desire to not worry about who is in the alley, who is hiding on the other side of the street as you're walking to your car at night, who is lurking, waiting to attack. The basic human desire to know that you are safe, that you are protected, that you are secure. We have to reach out and connect with people on a human, emotional level and say, not one more. Not one more. Not one more life should be stolen by illegal immigration. It is a moral essential, a moral command, a moral imperative. So I'm happy to have a conversation about any issue, any place, anytime, anywhere. But to the Democrat Party, I say, I have nothing to discuss with you when you are letting criminal migrants rape and murder American citizens. We have nothing to discuss because what you have done is unforgivable. It is unpardonable. It is unconscionable. It is indefensible. And no party that would do such a thing to innocent women, innocent children, innocent little girls deserves to hold one seat in the House, one seat in the Senate, one staffer in the White House. They should all be retired and go home. So I'll leave you with this thought. Being right and losing means nothing. Each and every one of you, and I don't know everyone in this audience, but like I said, I consider you all friends. You have some role in this movement. You're a staffer, you're an activist, you're a writer, you're an author, you're a communicator. Whatever your role is, all that matters between now and November is what are you doing to help save America? What are you doing to help defeat a political party that is hell-bent on power at any expense, that is hell-bent on power, no matter how much wreckage is caused, how many innocents are hurt, how many lives are taken, how many communities are destroyed, how many families are forever torn apart? What are you doing to help achieve justice for those victims and a brighter future for all of America's children? People always say this is the most important election. This not only is the most important election, this is the fulcrum point. This is the decision point for the West. Either the West will be saved or it will fall. That is the choice. We know what we're up against. We know what they're capable of. As we've said, they've been lying to us about the most fundamental thing for 3.5 years. Choose victory. Choose optimism. Choose hope. Choose success. Because I choose to believe that there will be a day of reckoning for the left and a day of salvation for the United States of America. Thank you. God bless you, and God bless America.